And then to go on to the next speaker, I think I can invite Scan4Transport, and this will be around 50 minutes where we will see a recording which will be played, and it's Michiel who will tell us about a relatively new global standard for encoding transport data on a logistic label.
Hi, I'm Michiel Ruighaver from GS1 Australia. I'm the T&L Manager for the Scan4Transport Centre of Excellence, and also the chair of both the global and the Australian New Zealand Scan4Transport work groups. I'm excited to be able to talk to you today about Scan4Transport, which is a new standard which enables the key data required to support the transport process to be encoded in a barcode on the transport label. Most businesses rely on freight transport, yet it's often overlooked. So regardless of the industry you're in or the type of business you are, if you're either buying or selling goods, freight will play a key component in your business. Freight is also a key component in many initiatives that businesses currently have, whether it's about improving supply chain visibility or the traceability of products, improving efficiency, the authenticity and stopping counterfeiting challenges, improving supply chain resilience, or addressing sustainability targets, as well as digitalisation of businesses. Freight is an extremely fragmented industry. Businesses will quite often have a transport company that'll support them with local deliveries. However, when it comes to regional deliveries, other transport companies can get involved. Similarly, moving freight to interstate locations can also incur additional transport companies. In Australia, there are over 40,000 transport companies to support the various freight requirements, everything from moving satchels through to cartons, pallets, dangerous goods, and ugly freight. When we take it from a global perspective, there are over 1 million companies. These companies all have their own unique systems, and this creates challenges for the transport industry. Each of these systems will have their own identifiers and their own formats for encoding key data on the transport label. Now, if we think of the transport label as being a license plate, and just like a license plate for a car, it acts as a reference key to additional data. Now, the problem with each one of these companies coming up with their own license plate is that they may not make sense to other parties in the supply chain. So if you look at a sample of license plates here as an analogy, some of you may look at some of the characters on the license plates and not understand what they mean. So in my case, it's the green label at the top of the screen in the middle. Some of you may also look at some of the elements on the transport label and not be 100% confident what they mean. Take the yellow label in the top right corner, which says Shanghai. Now, I'm assuming the freight in this particular case has come from Shanghai. However, if I look at the label on the bottom right, which says Victoria, the place to be, some may think that this freight actually has to go to Victoria as opposed to it's come from Victoria. Because of the different labeling requirements, companies often have multiple label formats to support the different carriers that they deal with. Many of these formats just contain a unique identifier that enables the transport company to access the key information they need to keep the freight moving. But this identifier is merely a reference key, a bit like the license number we saw on the previous license plates. And that requires each one of those companies along the bottom of that linear supply chain you see on the screen to have received that electronic transport instruction. Now, if there's any delays in that transport instruction, there could be challenges. Similarly, if all those parties along the supply chain are not connected to each other, there could be challenges getting those transport instructions moved along the supply chain. Also, if any of those parties at a particular point in time don't have access to the internet or the relevant system, it can create further challenges. In this event, manual processes are required to keep that freight moving. When supply chains are disconnected, this can impact supply chain visibility and the traceability of products across the supply chain. It can impact efficiency, resilience, the sustainability and the digitalisation of these businesses. Scan4Transport was developed by industry for industry. It provides a global standard for encoding the key data required to support the freight transport process from the transport label. So this includes information like the consignment ID, the transport unit ID, service descriptions, routing information, ship to and return to information, as well as additional handling instructions. And over time, this standard will hopefully become the last label format businesses will ever set up. Scan4Transport enables freight to talk. And this can improve interoperability within businesses. So instead of requiring different labels for different transport companies, businesses can move towards a standard label. And there's no need to relabel the freight as it moves along the supply chain. The standards use a consistent freight unit identifier, the serial shipping container code, which is a globally unique identifier for the freight that can be maintained throughout the whole supply chain journey. This means that a particular bit of freight will not be confused with any other bit of freight across the supply chain. It can enhance processes in both the first mile, last mile, and sortation processes across the supply chain. So in the event that the electronic instructions have not been received, the key data required to keep the freight moving can be extracted from the barcode. The barcode can also direct people to the key systems that contain additional information via a GS1 digital link. Now, the standards for digital link in the transport context still need to be ratified, but we're certainly looking for companies to pilot the standards further to help that process of ratification. Freight can provide instructions around how to route the freight across the supply chain, whether it's going through inland or via an airport. The freight can contain a global shipment identifier, which supports the grouping of freight to make it evident if a particular piece of freight is left behind. The data within the freight label can improve planning processes by providing information about physical and cubic dimensions of the freight. It can prevent the incorrect items from being loaded through containing information such as the consignment and ship to address. It can improve safety and compliance within businesses through a dangerous goods flag, which can be used to alert people that the freight contains dangerous goods and may not be suitable for mixing with other types of freight. You can reduce injuries across businesses by enabling the freight to call out if it's a particular weight and dangerous to be lifted. Scan4Transport can simplify delivery to complex locations by containing a GPS coordinates of the delivery location. This is particularly useful for rural deliveries where a particular address can span multiple kilometres and provide exact instructions of where to drop the freight off. Similar scenarios like construction sites would find this very useful, as there are typically no streets yet, and the GPS coordinates can specify exactly where to drop the freight. There's the ability for parties along the supply chain to obtain richer ship-to location information. There are keys called the global location number, which can be encoded within the Scan4Transport barcode and used as a reference key within a GLN registry to find out more information about the delivery ship-to address. Information such as what are the site constraints and what are the facilities available on the site. Information such as the ship-to postal code can be encoded to support activities such as the sorting of freight, but also validating that a particular driver, such as a last mile driver, is picking up the correct freight for his delivery routes. We can increase customer satisfaction through encoding information such as service requirements to specify whether the freight needs to be handled express, for example. We can communicate things like delivery date requirements, such as don't deliver me before 9 a.m. on a Tuesday because no one will be there. So a classic example is delivering freight for a conference. Similarly, when delivering freight for a conference, you want to make sure that it arrives before the conference starts and not after it finishes. So you can specify dates such as not after delivery dates, so that if something goes wrong in the supply chain, corrective actions can be taken to ensure the freight arrives in time. And if it is not going to make it in time, to contact relevant parties to seek further instructions what to do next. We can encode information such as ship-to phone numbers, which can be really valuable, in particular in the last mile process, to automate transactions such as SMS messages to let people know that their delivery is on board for today. We can increase the security and compliance of freight around advising parties in the supply chain to capture an autograph upon delivery. We can include information around authority to leave. And this is providing permission to leave the freight in a safe spot as no one's home and reduces failed deliveries. We can simplify reverse logistic processes by encoding things like return to information. So if a failed delivery occurs, we know exactly where to send the freight back to. There is a wealth of resources available to support the communication of the Scan4Transport standards, trials and implementations of the standards. As a starting point, I encourage you all to leverage the Scan4Transport website. There's a wealth of information, including documents and videos about the standard, guidelines on how to implement, pilot videos and reports, demo tools and implementation tools to simplify the adoption of the standards, as well as an informative hands-on video around how the digital link standard could work for your business. There's also a fantastic Tale of Two Labels video, which shows you delivery of a freight using a typical transport label versus the new Scan4Transport label and the benefits it provides all parties along the supply chain. If you're looking to get up and running quickly, whether it's from a piloting or an implementation perspective, there are even templates available in leading barcoding software such as Bartender to get you up and running quickly, as well as free trials which you can download. From a next steps perspective, I encourage everybody to download the Scan4Transport guideline to promote the standards within their supply chain. So to talk to their shippers, their logistics service providers and the solution providers about adopting the standards. To get on board with trialing and implementing the standards so that everyone along the supply chain can benefit. And of course, to reach out for support. You can access my contact details via scanning the barcode, and I look forward to hearing from you.
All right, thank you for your presentation, Michiel. Like I said, you can ask the questions to Michiel in the chat. He's online with us, and he will be replying there.